Halloween night always has that strange weight to it. The kind that makes your skin prickle for no reason. The air feels colder, heavier, and every sound seems sharper. I used to laugh at that idea until the year I worked the night shift at Jefferson Middle School. I'd been doing security there for almost 2 years. It wasn't a bad gig. Quiet, predictable, boring most nights. The building was old, built in the 1930s. All long hallways and creaking floors. My job was simple. Keep an eye on the cameras, lock the doors, and make rounds every couple of hours. But on Halloween night, something always felt wrong. That year, it started early. Around 9 p.m., when the janitor left, he said, "Don't let the kids in tonight." I laughed, thinking he meant pranksters. He didn't laugh back. I brushed it off, made my coffee, and sat down in the small office surrounded by flickering monitors. There were 12 cameras covering the hallways and exits. I knew the layout by heart. Every corner, every blind spot. At 10:46, the lights flickered. All of them. Just a quick pulse. Like the building exhaled. The monitors glitched for a second. And when they came back on, one camera hallway C showed movement. 4 figures. Small. Standing in the middle of the corridor. At first, I thought they were kids. Costumes, maybe. But they didn't move. They stood shoulder to shoulder, perfectly still. The image quality was grainy, but I could make out faint shapes. One ghost, one clown, one with a pumpkin mask, and another I couldn't identify. I switched cameras. When I came back, the hallway was empty. The motion alert was still blinking red. I rewound the footage. Nothing. Like the system had erased the few seconds they appeared. My stomach started to tighten, but I forced myself to stay calm. The system glitched sometimes. It happened. At 11:12, another motion alert. Same hallway. This time, I decided to check in person. I grabbed my flashlight and radio, the beam slicing through the dark. The hallway was cold, not hustily. Like the air itself was draining heat from my skin. Every step echoed, bouncing down the corridor in hollow waves. When I reached the center of the hall, I noticed something strange. The lockers on the left side were slightly open. All of them. I was sure they'd been locked earlier. Primera awakens passed, closing them one by one. That's when I heard it. A soft sound, like someone dragging their fingertips across metal. Slow. Scraping. I turned the flashlight toward the noise. Nothing. Just more lockers. Then I looked down. There were small footprints on the floor. Dusty, like they'd been there for years, but fresh enough to see the shape of each toe. The trail led toward one of the classroom doors. It was open a crack, though I knew I'd locked it. I pushed it open with my flashlight. Inside, rows of desks faced a blackboard still covered in faded chalk. On the far wall was a paper banner. Happy Halloween -1963. That didn't make sense. The school hadn't had that banner up for decades. I stepped closer. The chalk on the board began to fade, like someone was erasing it, slowly, invisibly. Then words appeared in its place, written by an unseen hand. We never left. My throat went dry. I stumbled backward, the beam of my flashlight shaking across the room. That's when I heard it laughter, high-pitched, childlike, echoing through the hallway. It wasn't playful, it was hollow. I ran back to the hall, but the sound was all around me now. Overlapping voices whispering, giggling, calling names I couldn't understand. The temperature dropped again, my breath fogged in the air. Then the overhead lights flickered once more, and for half a second, I saw them. 4 children standing at the far end of the hall, still as statues. The clown's mask was cracked down the middle, the pumpkin-headed one's grin carved too deep, and the smallest the ghost had eyes completely black. When the light flickered off and back on, Te Weragoni, I ran back toward the office, nearly tripping over my own feet. But as soon as I reached for the doorknob, the monitors inside came to life on their own. Every screen glowed white, static hissing. Then one feed cleared. Hallway C again, only this time I was on it, walking fast, flashlight shaking and baned me. For kids, they weren't walking. They were gliding. Their feet didn't touch the ground. The screen went black. That was enough. I grabbed my keys, bolted for the exit, and didn't look back. I didn't even lock the doors. I got in my car, shaking, and sped out of the parking lot. When I got home, I told myself, I imagined it all. Stress, maybe. Lack of sleep. But when I checked my phone, I noticed something. An email from the school's security system. No subject, no body, just an attachment. It was a still image, a screenshot from the hallway camera. Me, standing alone in the dark corridor. Only I wasn't alone. Behind me, for faint shapes, small, pale, barely visible, standing shoulder to shoulder. The timestamp read 12:02 a.m., October 31st. I quit the next morning, never went back, but every Halloween night since, at exactly 12:02, I get that same email, same attachment, same hallway, only now I'm not in it anymore. Just the kids, and they're all looking straight at the camera. Everyone in my hometown knew about the old Miller house. It sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac, half swallowed by trees, with boarded windows and a sagging porch that creaked in the wind. People said it used to belong to a family that vanished one Halloween night in 1978. Father, mother, 2 kids. No one knew where they went. Every year after that, the house stayed empty. Realtors tried to sell it. Kids dared each other to knock on its door, and sometimes people swore they saw lights flickering inside. I never believed any of it, until last Halloween. There were 4 of us, me, Tyler, Josh, and his girlfriend Mia. We were all 20, bored, and too old for trick-or-treating, but too restless to just sit home. Tyler came up with the idea. "Let's go inside the Miller house," he said, "just to prove it's all fake." I hesitated. Everyone had heard the rumors that if you knock on the door after midnight, someone or something knocks back. But that's exactly what made it interesting. We parked down the street and walked through the overgrown yard, our phone flashlights barely cutting through the fog. The closer we got, the quieter everything became. No crickets, no cars, not even wind, just the crunch of leaves under our shoes. The front door was half-rutted but still standing. Tyler tried the knob. Locked. He grinned and pulled a small crowbar from his backpack. "Don't tell me you came unprepared." The wood splintered with a loud crack. We froze, waiting to see if anyone or anything would react. Nothing. Just silence. Inside, the air was thick, like breathing through wet cloth. The living room was coated in dust, old furniture draped with sheets, a single lamp on the table, unplugged but still standing upright. Mia whispered, "It smells like dirt and candles." Josh laughed nervously. "That's probably what death smells like." We went deeper inside, stepping over fallen plaster and broken glass. My flashlight passed over a wall, covered in children's drawings. Faded crayon sketches of pumpkins, ghosts, and one picture that looked like a tall black figure with no face. "Creepy art," Tyler muttered. "Bet some goth kid broke in years ago." In the kitchen, the clock on the wall was still ticking. That stopped us all cold. It shouldn't have been working. No power, no batteries, no reason. But the second hand moved steadily, ticking toward midnight. 11:59. Tyler smiled. Perfect timing. He pulled out his phone and started recording. "Let's see if the stories are true." We all gathered near the front door. The paint was peeling, and deep scratches marked the wood. Someone had carved something near the doorknob where it's too faded to read. He knocked 3 times. For a few seconds, nothing. Then a knock came back. 3 knocks. From the other side, my heart slammed against my ribs. "Probably the wind," Josh said, though his voice cracked. Tyler knocked. Again. Louder. 3 more came back. Faster this time. We looked at each other. Nobody spoke. Then the doorknob started to turn. I swear on my life, it moved. Slow, deliberate, squeaking as it turned halfway and stopped. Mia grabbed my arm. Let's go. I'm serious. But Tyler was already pushing forward, adrenaline in his grin. He swung the door open. There was no one there, just the empty porch, the fog, the dead yard. But something had changed. The air was colder now. I could see my breath even inside the house. And the clack, I turned my head just in time to see it had stopped. The second hand frozen exactly at 12 o'clock. Tyler stepped outside. See? Nothing. Urban legend. He turned his phone toward the yard, panning slowly. Then Mia gasped. At the end of the driveway stood a figure. A woman. Pale. Barefoot. In a long nightgown. Her hair was hanging wet against her face, and even from a distance, I could see her head twitching slightly, like she was shivering or crying. Hello, Tyler called. The woman tilted her head. Then she raised her arm and pointed directly at him. Tyler froze. Is this some kind of joke? The woman's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just a long, silent scream. Then, in one blink, she was gone. The fog rolled forward, swallowing the driveway. We ran back inside without thinking. The door slammed shut on its own so hard that the glass shattered. That's when we heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, pacing back and forth. Josh shouted, "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped. Then a child's voice answered from the top of the stairs. Mommy said, "Don't open the door." I felt the blood drain from my face. Mia started crying, whispering, "Please, let's go." But before we could move, a faint light appeared in the hallway. A warm glow, like a candle. Slowly, a small figure came down the stairs. A boy, maybe 8 years old, holding a melted candle stub. He looked right at us and said, "You shouldn't have come." Then the candle went out. The next thing I remember is running through the kitchen, out the back door, tripping through the weeds until we reached the car. Tyler didn't stop driving until we were halfway across town. We didn't speak the entire ride home. None of us could explain what we saw. The next morning, I checked my phone. The video Tyler recorded was still there, but when I played it back, something was wrong. The moment he opened the door, the footage went black, except for one frame. A single, still image. 4 people standing on the porch. Us, and behind us, through the cracked door, a pale woman in a nightgown, smiling. By the time the last batch of trick-or-treaters came around, Mark was half asleep on the couch. The neighborhood had gone quiet, and the only sound was the faint wind brushing against the windows. He was about to turn off the porch light when there was a soft, deliberate knock. Not a child's knock. Slower, heavier. He frowned, checking the time. 12:07 a.m. Too late for kids. Why? Too late. Still, he grabbed the candy bowl and opened the door. On his porch stood 3 children, dressed in old-fashioned costumes. A ghost with a sheet so yellowed it looked ancient. A girl in a tattered princess gown, and a boy with a cracked plastic devil mask. None of them spoke. They just stood there, motionless, each holding out a small, metal pail. Mark chuckled awkwardly. "You kids are out late." "Last stop of the night, huh?" No response. Their stillness made him uneasy. The air around them felt colder, heavier, like the temperature had dropped by 10 degrees. He dropped a few candies into each bucket. "All right, get home safe." The smallest one. The ghosts tilted their heads slightly, like they were studying him. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the child said, "Thank you." The tone was strange. Hollow. Echoing. Almost like it came from somewhere behind him instead of the porch. Mark forced a smile and shut the door, but curiosity got the better of him. When he peeked through the window, the 3 kids were gone. Completely vanished. Not walking down the street, just gone, as if they'd never been there. He brushed it off as exhaustion. Maybe he just didn't hear them leave. But the next morning, when he stepped outside, he noticed something odd. The candy wrappers he'd left in the bowl were scattered on the porch, and on one of them was a faint handprint. Small, but burned into the plastic like it had been pressed by heat. That detail bothered him all day. He told himself it was just a weird trick of light, maybe melted under the porch bulb. Still, he couldn't shake the image of that silent ghost kid staring at him. A few days later, while talking to his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Daner, he mentioned the strange visitors. Her reaction made his stomach twist. He said, 3 children, say, Askip. 1 ghost, 1 princess, and 1 little devil. He nodded slowly. She went pale. Oh, dear. That's the Peterson children. They lived 2 streets over. There was a fire. Must have been 40 years ago now. Happened on Halloween night. The house burned before anyone could get them out. Mark laughed nervously. No, you're mistaken. These were just kids in costumes. But she shook her head, eyes glassy. No, dear. Every few years, someone says they come back. Always the same 3. Always silent. They say they'd knock on 1 door, take candy, and then disappear. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He checked the locks 3 times, turned off every light, and sat in bed staring at the ceiling. At 12:03 a.m., he heard it again. Knock. 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 Slow. Even. The same rhythm. He froze. The candy bowl still sat by the door from earlier, and for a moment, he thought maybe if he just ignored it, they'd leave. But the knocking came again, this time a little louder. Then he heard something else, a faint metallic rattle, like a tin pail swaying in the wind. Mark's breath caught. He grabbed his phone and opened the camera app. Creeping toward the front door, through the peephole, he saw nothing but darkness. The porch light flickered, then dimmed to black. He hit record and slowly opened the door. The porch was empty, but in the center of the doormat sat 3 small candy pails. 1 dented, 1 cracked, 1 melted at the rim. Inside each was a piece of candy, still wrapped, but the labels were faded like they'd been sitting there for decades. He backed away slowly, whispering, "What the hell?" When he felt a sudden chill at his neck, a soft child's voice whispered right behind his ear. "We didn't say thank you." A spoon around heart hammering. No one was there. But the reflection in the dark TV screen across the room, it showed 3 faint silhouettes standing behind him. The next morning, the police came after a neighbor reported hearing screams. The front door was wide open, the porch empty. No sign of Mark, only 3 small pails sitting in a neat row at the threshold. Later, when investigators checked his phone, they found a single video. Static-filled, almost unreadable, but in the final few seconds, the frame showed a blurry glimpse of the porch, and 3 figures standing just beyond the light, perfectly still. Each wore the same costumes. A ghost, a princess, a devil. And in the final moment before the video cut off, one of them lifted a hand toward the camera, a small, charred hand, and whispered, "Happy Halloween." The file corrupted immediately after that frame. To this day, no one knows what happened to Mark. But every Halloween, neighbors say they hear soft knocks long after midnight. 3 in a row, followed by the faint rattle of metal pails scraping across the porch. And if you're unlucky enough to answer, you might find those same 3 children waiting, their costumes older, their eyes darker, their voices echoing from somewhere far colder than this world. Because some trick-or-treaters never stopped making their rounds.